Welcome to the Grove, everybody! My name is Eli, and today we're going to be teaching you how to play Smallfolk. This game was kindly provided and published by Rocknest Games, and was designed by Alfie Wright and Gloria Lau, with art by Nadina Jakubowski, Ver Fadul, Marina Paisan, and Angela Gubert. Keep in mind this is a prototype copy of the game, so rules and components are subject to change. In Smallfolk, players journey through a world of folklore, collecting stories and myths from around the globe in order to create their own legend. You will gather and spend resources to play cards into your story, each depicting a tale from Arabic, Celtic, Greek, or Japanese mythology. Before we get into gameplay, let's first talk about how to set up the game. Begin by placing the board in the center of the table, allowing for space below it. Then, shuffle the story card deck, and set the top 5 cards face up under the board, forming what's known as the tapestry. Place the remaining cards face down next to the tapestry, forming the story deck, and be sure to leave some space for a discard pile. Whenever a card is discarded during the game, it will be placed here face up. Next, shuffle the hero cards and place them face down next to the map, forming the hero deck. After that, create the supply by placing the resource tokens in a pool near the main board, and place the happiness and hero tokens nearby as well. Depending on player count, place a number of victory point tokens in the middle of the map. For 1 to 2 players, you will use 20 victory points, 3 players will have 28, and 4 will have 35. Lastly, we have player setup. Each player should choose a color and take the matching player aid card, as well as their victory point bag. And since this is a prototype, just keep in mind there are no victory point bags yet, so we'll be using some generic ones. Put the adventurer pawns on the starting space of the map near the blue anchor symbol in the bottom left. Next, deal each player 2 story cards as well as a hero card, placing the hero face up in front of them to form their party. Then, give each player 1 of each type of resource: Arcana, Food, Gold, and Knowledge, forming the player's personal stash. Make sure everyone has space in front of them. They will need to be able to play up to 10 cards in the space in front of them known as their story. Finally, the first player is determined by the person who has most recently told a story. Give them the first player marker. We're just going to use this leftover meeple in our game. You can also randomly select a starting player using your group's favorite method. And with setup complete, let's now talk about gameplay. On your turn, you may perform one of the following actions, which are also described on your player aid cards. First, you can discover, which allows you to play a story card from your hand into your tableau. Next, you can journey, which allows you to take a step on the board and gain the listed reward. And finally, you can quest, which allows you to perform the action on your hero cards. To dive a bit deeper into the discover action, let's first review the layout of these story cards. The top left-hand corner of each story card shows you the cost to play them. Additionally, each card has a printed point value denoted here in the blue point symbol. This will be factored in during end-of-game scoring. Next, the card's traits are located in the top right, and there are 4 to remember: Creature, Relic, Wonder, and Smallfolk. Alongside these traits, you will also see 1 or more of the Earth, Water, Air, and Fire symbols. These are important for interacting with the other story cards and triggering happiness, which we'll go over in more detail later, but for now just know that some cards have a happiness requirement on them, represented by this peach color here at the bottom of the card. And if at any point you're curious about what all these icons mean, you can check your player aid for more details. In addition to traits, cards also have 1 of 3 types of banners: orange instant cards, dark blue exhaust cards, or light green gather cards. But we'll go over all of those in more detail here shortly. In addition to the story cards you'll be playing, you'll also be able to gain and use hero cards. These have a powerful ability, so they can only be used once per game. You start with 1 and can only gain 2 more throughout your journey, so use these special abilities wisely. Now that we have touched on story and hero cards, let's look at how a turn will play out. As we said earlier, during your turn you can take 1 of 3 actions: Discover, Journey, or Quest. Taking the Discover action allows you to play cards from your hand into your story, and to do so you must first pay its cost. There are a few different ways to pay for your cards, so let's review some scenarios. Say you wanted to play this super adorable Hound of Tartarus by paying 1 knowledge and 1 food. If you have both of those in your supply, you can simply pay that, returning it to the supply, and place the card in your story. But what if you don't have the food? Luckily, there are still a few ways that you can pay for it. First, Arcana resources are treated as wild cards, so you could use that to cover the cost. Next, you can always spend 2 matching resources in place of another, so you could instead spend 2 gold to cover that knowledge cost. Lastly, you can always discard other cards from your hand to pay the cost instead. In order to do this, the card you discard must have the resources you need depicted in its own card cost. For instance, you could discard this Kitsune to pay for the food requirement. Sorry little fox, but my puppy needs to eat. Remember, when discarding a story card, it must come from your hand, and each discarded card only pays for one symbol each. That said, you can discard as many cards as you need to cover any resources you don't have. If at any point you have 10 story cards in your tableau and you wish to play another, you must first remove one from your story and put it back in the discard pile. But don't worry, having an overflowing story is a good thing, as every time this happens, you'll also get to take a victory point token. Now that we've gone over how to play your story cards, let's discuss those banners we talked about earlier. If you play a card with an instant effect, you'll need to resolve that ability immediately. There are certain triggers in the game that can allow you to reuse instants, but typically this is the only time you'll get to use it. In addition to instant cards, there are also those with exhaust effects, and these can trigger whenever you take the journey action. We'll talk about the journey action in more detail later, but for now, just know that whenever you exhaust a card, you'll want to rotate it 90 degrees sideways, and then resolve its exhaust effect, which can be either gathering resources or taking specific actions. Finally, we have cards with the Gather ability. These allow you to gain resources whenever you reach this green campfire symbol on the board. One last thing before we move on. Remember the happiness requirement we talked about earlier? At the end of each of your turns, and regardless of whether or not you took the Discover action, you'll need to check for any happiness requirements you've met. For example, this Kappa here wants to be with 2 other water icons among the cards you have in your play area. Let's say you had also played this Boat of Souls, as well as this Selkie here. These each have a water icon on them, meaning that you're able to fulfill the Kappa's happiness requirement. This is a May ability, so you don't have to do this if you're not ready, but once you do, place a happiness token on the card and gain the listed rewards. With this Kappa here, I'd gain a point as well as a food resource. Note that cards cannot lose happiness, but if at any point they're discarded from your story, return the token to the supply before you place a card in the discard pile. In the event that you can make multiple cards happy in one turn, you may receive your rewards in the order of your choice. And finally, individual cards cannot make themselves happy, but you can use multiple other cards to make any number of other cards happy at the same time. Alright, that's everything you do during a Discover action. I know that sounds like a lot, but it all boils down to pay the cost of the cards you want to play, and then play it. Not too bad, right? We're now ready to move on to the journey action. When you go on a journey, you can resolve the following in any order. Move your meeple along a path on the board, also known as taking a step, and then gain the rewards listed on that space. Let's go over these symbols now. This blue star icon means you'll gain a victory point marker to add to your bag. This story card symbol here means you'll draw a story card from the deck. The campfire allows you to refresh any of your exhausted cards and then perform any gather abilities you have in your tableau. When you reach this hero icon, you can draw a hero card from the hero deck and add it to your party. Space is limited, and you may only have a total of 3 heroes, so if you already have 3 and you reach this space again, you can't draw another one. This Arcana symbol means you get to gain an Arcana from the supply, and finally, reaching this space on the board means you'll gain 2 victory points, and the anchor symbol returns you to the starting location, effectively completing a lap around the board. In addition to taking a step, you may also either claim a card from the tapestry or resolve the exhaust ability on one of your cards. We've already discussed exhaust effects, but claiming simply means choosing any of the 5 face-up cards in the tapestry to add to your hand. When cards are claimed from the tapestry, draw new cards to replace them at the end of your turn. It's important to remember that drawing and claiming cards are 2 separate actions. When you draw a card, it must be from the deck, and when you claim a card, it must be taken from the tapestry. Finally, you can have a maximum of 7 story cards in your hand. If at any point you would resolve an effect that would put you over this limit, you're unable to draw those cards. To recap the journey action, you're simply going to be taking a step on the board and then gaining those rewards, and either claiming or exhausting a card. Alright, 2 down and 1 to go. Thankfully, quests are simple. When you go on a quest, you can resolve the ability on one of your hero cards. Once you've used this action, place a hero token on your card to signify that it has been used, as these powerful effects can only be resolved once per game. After you've performed your hero's ability, your turn's over. And that's everything you can do on your turn. Now it's time to go over triggering the end of the game and final scoring. A game of Smallfolk ends when the victory point markers in the center of the board run out. Anytime you're rewarded with a victory point token, take one from the board and put it into your bag. You may look at how many tokens you have at any time, however it should remain secret from the other players until the end of the game. Once the final token is taken, play will continue until everyone has had an equal number of turns, and even if there are no more victory tokens on the board, you can still earn more from the supply. Once everyone has finished their final turn, it's time to move on to endgame scoring. To determine your final score, count the number of victory point tokens you have in your bag, along with the total number of victory points listed on your cards in your tableau. After everyone's tallied their scores, the player with the highest victory points wins. And in the event of a tie, whoever has the most happy cards wins. If there's still a tie, the victory is shared. Now that you know how to play the game, consider checking out our playthrough that is linked in the description and will be included at the end of this video. And that's all you need to know how to play Smallfolk. Put on some comfy hiking boots and grab your favorite walking stick. It's time to find out whether you'll be part of the world story or if you'll just be a wisp in the wind as you play Smallfolk.